Welcome. This is the tutorial video for the Nativity Angel by Nell and Jo Crafts. I'm Ashley, and I am going to take you through stitching this hoop and all the tips and tricks you need to know. I will be stitching on the 4-inch ornament sized hoop. If you are working on the 8-inch display size hoop, all the instructions are going to be almost exactly the same, and anything that is different between the two, I'll make sure to call out so you know what to do different. Otherwise, just stitch along and it will all turn out fabulous. The first thing we're going to talk about on this hoop is tracing the pattern. So for this hoop, it's important that you check the weave of your fabric before you trace your pattern on, and especially before you start stitching. So what we're looking at are the lines of the fabric. You can see some of them are a little bit lighter than others. We're wanting to make sure that they're straight up and down and straight left and right. You can see I've got like a little wobble here and a little wobble here. The reason we want them to be as straight as possible is because we're making long stitches from the top of the wing down to the bottom of the wing. And anytime we have to take this out of its hoop when we're finishing it, or if you're stitching on the back and then flipping to the front, we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success by creating a straight, level base to work on, not fabric that's pulled all a bunch of wonky directions, because it'll be so much harder to get these wing lines to look straight in the end if we ever have to move the fabric. So just take a minute as you're tightening your fabric and make sure that everything looks good, and then you're ready to start tracing. Then once you do start tracing, you'll notice here in the wings, I did not trace the full vertical line that is on the pattern. You can do that if you want, but since we're stitching each wing line as a straight full stitch, all you really need to have is the top and the bottom of the stitch marked. So you can save a little bit of time there and not have to trace the full way down if you don't want to. After that, we are ready with our fabric and our hoop, and we're going to start by filling in the body of the angel. And the body of the angel is made with long and short stitch. And you can see, hopefully, we're zoomed in a little bit closer. Here we are on our stitch diagram on the project instructions page. There are long and short stitches made with 3 colors. So we're going to start with 3033, we'll move into 3866, and finish with 3865. We're going to use 6 strands for all of that. So we're going to follow our guidelines here. This bottom section is 3033, then this middle section goes into 3866, and then 3865 for the top. So to begin, we're going to get 6 strands on our needle, and I'm going to make my camera focus the right way. There we go. And we're just going to make a series of long and then short stitches along the bottom, working our way towards the top. I like to start in the middle. You can start wherever. And we're just going to make a longer stitch. And then I'm going to come up right next to this stitch like I would in satin stitch along this same edge in the bottom. And then I'm going to make a short stitch right next to it. So 1 stitch is long and 1 stitch is short. And then we repeat. This time I'm going to make a long stitch. Now the reason I'm making long and short stitches instead of a bunch of stitches, I can get that to come up where I want. There we go. Instead of a bunch of stitches that are the same length is because we want the body to feel like it's filled in continuously, like it's one piece of fabric. And if all of our stitches end along one same line through the body, then we're going to look like we've got stripes of color rather than a fade of stitches and color. Now, as you stitch this, feel free to rotate your hoop and do this in a different direction than straight on up and down, if that works better for you. Typically when I stitch long and short stitch, I like to start with my hoop upside down. For some reason it's easier for me to visualize that. I'm doing it straight up for you today so that my hoop holds still and nobody gets dizzy. But don't stress about what direction your hoop is facing. Sometimes I find myself mentally thinking, well, my person has to be standing straight up the whole time while I'm stitching, and that is just not the case. Rotate your hoop, move your hoop, change things up, figure out what's comfortable for you. So I'm going to continue filling in this bottom row here, and then we will check in again. Now that our first row of long and short is done, now we need to add stitches, filling in the rest of this space. So we're going to come up. I like to come up through the short stitches first. I'm going to split some of the strands here on that part. And then at this point, all of the stitches I make are going to be about the same length, about the length of a long stitch. So I'm going to come straight up about a long stitch length, which is now just going to be our normal stitch length, through here. And then I'm going to jump over to this other short stitch. I'm going to do the same. And I'm not going to worry too much about these stitches being the same length. We just want to make sure they're longer than what have now become the short stitches. As you can see, we're looking for that staggered edge. Now you could work back and forth like I am right now, left to right. You could work up one side of the edge and then fill in the middle. Really, however makes the most sense to you. You really just want to keep staggering the lengths of your stitches and keeping them nice and close together so that the body of our angel here looks all stitched in, all filled in. We don't want him to have any empty white spots. We're going to continue filling in the body of the angel until we have long stitches that go past all of this line, and our short stitches we want to be coming kind of to the line. We don't really want to see the full line. We want it to look like a wavy line all up and down this line. The more kind of wavy it looks, long and short along the edge, the more it's going to help us blend our next color of stitches in. So I'm going to continue making long and short, and I will check in when I have finished 3033 so we can see what happens and what it looks like at that point. I'm getting pretty close to finishing this bottom section, but some of my stitches are starting to feel a little bit far apart. I'm going to make this one right here, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have empty space on one or both sides of this stitch. So something I will do, this little space right here, a long and short, since we're going for an all over varied kind of feel, I will come down here at a spot that doesn't have a stitch at it. So you can see the bottom is right here. I'm going to go a little bit below that to the side possibly, or even up here in between. Split some stitches, add another stitch that is a different length to help fill in this space. So then as I continue up, everything stays nice and tight and fully covered. So if you need to add stitches as you go, don't worry about feeling like you need to stick with the perfect number of stitches every time. Just fill in the space as you go and keep stitching until you've filled in the entire section. Here's what my bottom section looks like with the 3033 done. You can see that you can't see the line anywhere. I'm flirting with it right here. There's a couple that are right to it, but I'm over the line and my edges are uneven. That's what we're going for. So now I will move on to 3866, the next just lighter color. And we're going to continue the same long and short process that we were before. We're just using a different color now. And the goal here is that we're going to do our best to make sure that some of these lines go farther into the bottom color than others. Again, blurring those lines between the two colors. Here again, I'm getting some gaps between stitches, so I'm going to use this as a chance to vary this line and add a little more variance of this lighter color down in. You can see that all of my stitches are kind of starting all along this same line here. So I'm going to go back much lower for this stitch to fill in this space up here. But I'm also going to blur the line of this light color a little bit more, which will help out our overall stitch. Right, this is what our hoop looks like now that I have finished the middle color of 3866, and I've got 3865 on my needle ready to go to fill in the top. But before we do that, I want to quick show you the large one real quick. I'm going to rotate here so it's in focus for you. Now you can see on this one, obviously there's more of everything. But here along the edges, we want this line of stitching to look like it follows up and curves in along both sides of our angel. So to do this, we're going to start having to overlap and blend some stitches along both edges. Now for the large size, that's going to be about here and up or so, maybe once or twice below. It's going to be feel like it's going to happen sooner on the ornament size. So I just wanted to give you a visual of the large size where that's going to be happening, how we're going to be taking those sides in. So let's come back over here to our small ornament that we've been stitching, and we're going to start filling in the rest. So right here along this edge, if I were to keep this stitch fully vertical, I could only go to about here before my line starts to curve. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to follow this side line about my stitch length up, and you can see that's going to put my needle overlapping this stitch, which is fine. It's not going to be a problem. So we're going to fill in that side there, and then I'm going to come back over here to this stitch, and it does have space to go straight up, but it's gonna start to conflict a little bit with what's going on right here on the side. So I'm gonna take this just a little bit to the side again so that this side stitch can more easily overlap what's going on here and keep this edge smooth. So now coming back down here to fill in this side, I'm gonna come all the way down to this last fully side stitch, take a long stitch up the edge. That's going to smooth out everything that's going on right there. And then I'll jump back here in the middle and continue in this way, basically all the way up this side, and then I'll either jump back down or work backwards for the other side. All right, now that I'm closer to this stronger curve, you can see I'm a lot narrower up here. I'm also going to start taking this farther in stitch over to the side a little bit, so it's not just this side stitch that is coming over. So you can see my thread's coming up right here, and I'm going over this next stitch so that it's more of a gentle blend and not just the very, very edge stitch that is marking, that is changing angle. Quick tip, it's easier to do this blending from bottom to top. So once you've done one side, you can either just jump all the way down here and have one big long carry and then start again, or you can make a few stitches along your way down on the shortest points to help you get there and make some of the stitches. Either way, I recommend stitching this outside lightest color from bottom to top. All right, I have finished filling in with 3865, and now we're going to go back and we're going to further kind of blur these transitions, add a little more texture to it. So I have 2 strands now of 3865 on my needle, and I've traded to my smaller needle, not my large one. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come up basically anywhere I want along this transition between these 2 colors, and I'm going to make some more stitches. And what this is going to do is this is going to begin to help to blur the line a little bit more. Now, it will be subtle, so if you don't feel like you're making much of a difference, that's okay. Don't stress about it. Some of my stitches I'm making sure to go over the transition line, making sure one end is in one color and one end is in the other color. And some of my stitches I'm keeping almost all the way down into the darker color. Again, just adding a little more visual interest here. There's no right or wrong answer at this point. If you like what it looks like without extra stitches, don't add any. If you feel like you've got some spots that are standing out and you'd like to change them a little bit, now is the time. All right, given the smaller size of this ornament, I think that's all I'm going to do on this one. I'm going to switch to 2 strands of 3866 and do the same thing for this transition. And there is the body of the angel finished. Basically, you're done when you feel like you have enough stitches. And I feel that way. So I'm going to move on to the next step, which is going to be to stitch the head and the halo.